Today I'm drinking some iced tea. I made it using green tea honey mango from Tea of Life. Alright, so I still don't know if I like vlogging or not, but I'm pretty sure I'm bad at it. I gave up filming clips like 2 weeks into this month and instead focused on posting some thoughts on Twitter. But now here I am with my wrap-up for the Asian Readathon. Well, I did it, and much less down to the wire than it was for Magical Readathon. I read all 4 books that were on my TBR for the month, as well as a couple extra things, because things got a little weird in the middle. Each of these were written by Asian authors, and all but one of them featured at least one Asian character or an Asian-inspired culture for the books that don't take place in our world. My intent was to fit these books into the prompts now after I read them. The prompts being recommended by an Asian, featuring an Asian character, written by an Asian author, which all of them fulfill. And then the other 2 were, you have something in common with either the Asian author or the Asian character, or it features an Asian character or written by an Asian author, you have something dissimilar with. I didn't find it hard to find things in common with the characters in the books, but sometimes that common trait felt a little personal to share, so I'm still going to try to find something else in common that's maybe a little more surface level. On the other hand, finding something different was very easy, but it was hard to find something a little deeper than just, I'm not Asian. So jumping into the books that I read in the order I read them. The first book this month was The Boat, originally written by Nam Lee. I watched, read, experienced the SBS production, which was adapted by Matt Hune, which was recommended by Cindy from Read with Cindy. This really started the month off on a strong but sad note. It was really touching, heartbreaking, beautiful. It's about a journey of a Vietnamese girl escaping Vietnam and on her journey to go to Australia, I think. I really, really recommend it. I recommend reading the story, but especially in this format because it was just so much more immersive. I really do want to read the original, but I don't know if it's going to be quite so powerful or if it'll hit home quite the same way. So, this one fulfilled the recommended by an Asian prompt, but for the others, something different is that I've never had to immigrate or change my citizenship. I've been an American citizen my whole life. But all 3 of the main characters in the boat are immigrating from Vietnam to Australia. Something similar though, like the main character in this, I also have a little brother that I care about, and sometimes I think about him when making really hard or difficult decisions. Next on my list, I read The Dragon Pearl by Yoon Ha Lee. This is about a young girl in a family of foxes. She's a fox. Her brother was accused of deserting the Space Force, the military, in order to seek out the mythological Dragon Pearl. And the main character, decides to discover what really happened, to follow his footsteps. I had high hopes for this and was unfortunately really disappointed. I'm not sure if my dissatisfaction with this, my lack of enjoyment of this is really due to the book itself, or if it's just because it's a middle grade sci-fi and I'm really not the right audience for middle grade sci-fi. I just found the characters were shallow, they weren't well rounded. I was hoping for just more from it. The main character Min doesn't grow at all. The action scenes just were lackluster, and I just found myself bored while reading this. It was actually kind of easy for me to find similarities between Min and myself. I have an older brother that's also in the military. He's in the reserves. So similar to Min's brother, who is in the military force for this nation. The similar things were almost too easy. I'm not magical. I've never been into space. Something more interesting, though, is Min grows up with all of her aunts and cousins and things. I'm not super close to my extended family the way that she seems to be. So this is the point where I kind of hit a snag and things got weird. Little Fires Everywhere was still on hold at this time, and it looked like it was going to be weeks before it was in, and I was already halfway through the month. So I decided to pick something else out and start it. So I put a couple more books on hold, but in the meantime, I started listening to Descendant of the Crane by Joan Hay, which is available on Spotify, at least as of right now. This is about a young woman who becomes the leader of her nation after her father's death, and she becomes obsessed with figuring out how he really died, what really happened, and this leads her down a whole path of questioning the religion of her culture and the prejudices that are ingrained in her society. This was a lot more politically driven than I normally like my fantasy to be, but I thought it was pretty good. My one complaint is that maybe there was just a little too much going on. There were just a few too many plots for a single book to handle, but I actually thought that was managed fairly well. Something I have in common with this main character, Hasina, is that I have an interesting and rather complicated relationship with my siblings, just like she does, both with her adoptive siblings and her full blood siblings and her half-siblings. I also have spent a lot of time reevaluating and overcoming my prejudices, which is a huge arc she deals with throughout the books. I'm gonna go for a bit of a low-hanging fruit with something we don't have in common, but I've certainly never been part of the ruling class of anywhere, not even a social circle. So one of the books I put on hold was The Prince and the Dressmaker by Zhen Wang. I've actually been wanting to read this for forever, and I was really excited to see it become available in the library, and I read that next. I don't want to say too much here because it's kind of a short read. It's about a seamstress that gets hired by the Prince of Belgium to become his exclusive designer, and it's about their relationship, and it's just so cute, and it was so sweet, but it never got cloyingly sweet. I didn't feel gross about it, and I really loved it. I will throw in a trigger warning here for forced outings, and trigger warnings for all the books I talk about in this video will be in the description if you want to check that out. So the characters in this actually aren't Asian or Asian inspired. Sebastian is Belgian, and Francis, the designer, is French. So I decided to start looking into similarities between myself and the author Zhen Wang. Her website was a little sparse on information, so something we have in common is that we appreciate our privacy and don't like to overshare personal information. But something we don't have in common is that she lives in LA and I've never even been to the West Coast. So somehow, miraculously, despite it still saying there were weeks left before it would be in, Little Fires Everywhere became available on Libby for me to read. So I started it as soon as I finished Descendant of the Crane. It's about a single mother and her daughter moving into this small, gated community that touts itself about being better than everyone else. And then it follows the relationship of both the mother and the daughter with this one of the rich families in the town, and then things kind of get complicated, to put it mildly. I almost really liked this book. I really liked the questions it posed about motherhood and what it means to be a parent who has the right to raise a child. It brings up some really interesting points about privilege and experience and what needs are, and more important than that, it doesn't answer those questions, which I really loved. I loved that it made me think about it without saying, well, here's the answer. What I didn't like was the basic teen movie backdrop that took place behind all of this. Pearl's story was just very distracting to me, and it made it really hard for me to enjoy all the rest of the stuff that was happening. I rolled my eyes when they had a classic high school parents are out party in the middle of this book. Like the author Celeste Ng, I'm also from Pennsylvania, but unlike her, I'm not from the western side. Finally, I went back to the Tenseret series with book 3, The Descent of Monsters by J.Y. Yang. True to my word, I waited to read this until the end of the month, which was really hard at first, but then I actually found it became easier because I got really into the other books I was reading. So this is book 3, which makes it a little hard to explain. The first book in this series is about these twins, Achaia and Makoya, growing up. It involves their kind of complicated, divided attention between the church and the government, and also the evolving relationship they have with each other. But then the series kind of expands beyond them. Each book has a different point of view. The first book being from Achaia's point of view. The second book, Red Threads of Fortune, is from Makoya's point of view. And then this third book is from an entirely different point of view of this inspector. There's also big time jumps between each of these books, so they almost feel standalone, but not quite. I think that's how this book ended up my least favorite of this series, just because the choice of perspective was a little weird to me. It's told through diary entries, which is just something I don't enjoy much. But when I say least favorite, it really is a relative term, because this series is just fantastic overall. I have loved all of the books. So far, the second one, Red Threads of Fortune, is my favorite because it's just amazing, but the whole series is great, and you couldn't ask for more representation. Much like the main character in this, Saruman, I too am in love with a beautiful pirate woman, and by that, of course, I mean Isabel from Dragon Age 2. Unlike Saruman, however, I have never been able to consistently keep a journal or diary in my life. I actually haven't picked up the fourth book yet, The Ascent of the Godhood, but I'll be getting to that one soon, so I can do a full series review and just spend 10 minutes raving about how much I love these books. Alright, so there you have it. Did you also do Asian Readathon? Whether or not, please give me some suggestions below for Asian authors you think maybe I should check out, and maybe even Asian-inspired fantasy you think I'd like. And please, if you've read Tenseret, talk with me about it in the comments, because I love these books. But more importantly, if you know a book series or a book similar to these, let me know, because I'm almost done with the series, and I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. Okay, bye.